And we check to make sure that we are online. Let's see. Not yet. Hold on a second. There we go. We're online now. Okay, so I guess I'll get the guitar. And where is that songbook? Second. Okay. All right. Anyway, we'll just all right. Someone has stolen my car again. This is very bad. And they're driving my car. I can see it on the internet. Very sinful. Very, very bad people. Anyway, everyone gets their karma. Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Sesha Shunyavani Asyachani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktam Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktam Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paracharya Alsatara Sajashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagannatha Swami Ki Jai Yamunamaya Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Sambhaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvadi Pacharne Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. So Megana Timidandasha Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshur and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay, we're going to continue with our study of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. We're reading from the Madhya Lila, chapter 9, about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travels to the holy places in South India. But before that, I wanted to show you all my avatar, if that's all right. Here's my avatar. This is my spiritual body in the spiritual world. Hare Krishna. So, just revealing to everybody. Where's, let's see, my boy's watching. Yeah. So, want to know if everyone prefer to see me this way or the other way. But in any case, it's spiritual. All right, joking aside. It's really funny. All right, joking aside, we're going to get back to the regular class. I just thought it would be interesting for you all to see, because we're looking for new ways all the time to join our Zoom calls so they don't get so boring. Every day we have to spend hours and hours and hours on Zoom, and it gets really boring. And so this is an avatar saffron too. Okay, so with that aside, let's go back to serious Krishna consciousness. Here we go. Serious Krishna consciousness. Okay, so let's continue with our reading of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, 9th chapter, and we are beginning. Let's see, I have to write this down, so I have it written for my YouTube. We're beginning with text. We'll see what text. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaitandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Oops, I just want to make this a little smaller. That's good. So we're continuing with text 241 in the Caitanya Caritamrta on the 9th chapter of the Madhya Lila. So let's go. Bahuyate se punte nila likaya ananda padmanabhaila harashitana. All right. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu copied the Brahma Samhita and then went with great pleasure. He went to a place known as Ananta Padmanabha. Concerning Ananta Padmanabha, one should refer to Madhya Lila, chapter 1, text 115. And previously, Prabhupada mentioned that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in the Caitanya Caritamrta is mentioned, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discovered the 5th chapter of the Brahma Samhita, which contains the highest truths, the whole essence, Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana of Krishna consciousness, all the tattvas, all the Siddhanta, and all the bhavas. Dina dve padmanabhera kaila dharashana anande dekite aila Sri Janardana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained for 2-3 days at Ananta Padmanabha and visited the temple there. Then in great ecstasy he went to see the temple of Sri Janardana. The temple of Sri Janardana is situated 26 miles north of Trivandrum near the Varkala railway station. Dina Dvaitahankari Kirtananartana Payasvinaya Siyadeke Shankara Narayana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted and danced at Sri Janardana for 2 days. He then went to the bank of the Payasvini River and visited the temple of Shankara Narayana. Well, that means Lord Shiva and Narayan. Shingari Mata Aila Shankacharya Stane Machatirtha Deki Kaila Tungabhadraya Snane. Then he saw the monastery known as Shingeri Mata, the headquarters of Acharya Shankara. He then visited Machatirtha, a place of pilgrimage, and took a bath in the river Tungabhadra. The monastery known as Shringeri Mata is situated in the state of Karnataka in the district of Chikmagalur. This monastery is located at the confluence of the rivers Tunga and Bhadra, 7 miles south of Hariharapura. Harihara means Vishnu and Lord Shiva together. Vishnu and Lord Shiva together, city or town. The real name of this place is Shringi Giri or Shringavera Puri, and it is the headquarters of Shankaracharya. Shankara had 4 principal disciples, and he established 4 centers under their management. In North India, at Bhadarikashrama, the monastery named Jyotirmata was established. At Purushottama, that's Jagannath Puri, the Bhogavardhana or Govardhan monastery was established. In Dwarka, the Sarada monastery was established, and the 4th monastery established in South India is known as Shingeri Mata. In the Shingeri Mata, the sannyasis assume the designations Saraswati, Bharati, and Puri. All Ekadandi sannyasis distinguished from the Vaishnava sannyasis who are known as Tridandi sannyasis. Ekadandi means they have 1 stick, which just means they try to merge into the absolute truth. And the Vaishnava sannyasis are known as Tridandi sannyasis because they have 3 sticks, which means that they don't merge 3 times into the absolute truth. That means they serve the Lord with the body, the mind, the words, and the soul is doing that because there's actually a 4th stick. The Shringeri Mata is situated in South India in a portion of the country comprising Andhra, Dravida, Karnataka, and Kerala. The community is called Burivara, and the dynasty is called Urbuha. The place is called Rameshwara, and the slogan is Aham Brahmasmi. That means I am spiritual. I am Brahman. The deity is Lord Baraha, and the energetic power is Kamala, Kamakshi. The Acharya is Hashta Malaka, and the brahmachari assistants of the sannyasis are known as Caitanya. The place of pilgrimage is called Tungabhadra, and the subject for Vedic study is the Yajurveda. Now, the Yajurveda is the Veda of sacrifices. Yajur, Swaha, Swaha, Swaha. The list of the disciplic succession, sorry to skip through this. The list of the disciplic succession from Shankaracharya is available, and the names of the acharyas and the dates of their accepting sannyas according to the Shaka area, Shakabda, are as follows. For approximate Christian era dates, add 78 years. Shankaracharya, 622 is Shaka. Suresvaracharya, 630, Shaka. Acharya, 680. Yana Dhanacharya, 768. Gyanottama Shivacharya, 827. Yanagiri Acharya, 871. Simagiri Acharya, 958. Actually, I'm going to skip the name of all these Mayavadi Acharyas. Sorry about that. Regarding Shankaracharya, it is understood that he was year 608 of the Shakabda era, in the month of Vaishak, on the 3rd day of the waxing moon, in the place in South India known as Kaladi. His father's name was Shiva Guru, and he lost his father at an early age. When Shankaracharya was only 8 years old, he completed a study of all scriptures and took sannyas from Govinda, who was residing on the banks of the Narmada. After accepting sannyas, Shankaracharya stayed with his spiritual master for some days. He then took his permission to go to Varanasi. From there he went to Bhadarikashrama, where he stayed until his 12th year. While there, he wrote a commentary on the Brahma Sutra, as well as, that's called the Rakya Bhasha, as well as the 10 Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. He was only 12 years old. Phew. He also wrote Sanat Sujatiya on the Nrsingatapani. Among his many disciples, his 4 chief disciples are Panapada, Sureshwara, Hashta Malaka, and Trotaka. After departing from Varanasi, Shankaracharya went to Prayag, where he met a great learned scholar called Kumarila Bhatta. Shankaracharya wanted to discuss the authority of the scriptures, but Kumarila Bhatta, being on his deathbed, sent him to his disciple Mandana in the city of Mahishmati. It was there that Shankaracharya defeated Madana Mishra in a discussion of the Shastras. Madana had a sati, or Ubaya Bharati, who served as mediator between Shankaracharya and her husband. It is said that she wanted to discuss erotic principles and amorous love with Shankaracharya, but Shankaracharya had been a brahmachari since birth and therefore had no experience in amorous love. He took a month's leave from Ubaya Bharati, and by his mystic power he entered the body of a king who just died. In this way, Shankaracharya experienced the erotic principles. After attaining this experience, he wanted to discuss erotic principles with Ubaya Bharati, but without hearing his discussion, she blessed him and assured the continuous existence of the Shringeri Mata. She then took leave of material. Afterwards, Madana Mishra took the order of sannyas from Shankaracharya and became known as Shrestha. Shankaracharya defeated many scholars throughout India and converted them to his Mayavad philosophy. He left his material body at the age of 33. As far as Madhya Tirtha is concerned, it was supposedly situated beside the ocean in the district of Malabar. Now let me just explain something about Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is considered by the Vaishnavas to be an incarnation of Lord Shiva. And there's a description of the Shastras that Lord Shiva was told by Lord Vishnu that in Kali Yuga you're supposed to go down and create an atheistic philosophy to bewilder people. So you may say, why was Lord Shiva told to go down to the earth planet and create an atheistic philosophy to bewilder people? The reason for that is that previously Lord Buddha had bewildered people and taken people away from the Vedic literatures with his philosophy of voidism. Of course, he didn't have it. I'd have to be clear. It's not that he had the philosophy of voidism, but his followers did. He never really touched upon the absolute. He just taught ahimsa, paramo dharma, that is what nonviolence is the supreme dharma, because people were killing cows in the name of the Vedic literature, people were exploiting others because of their so-called Brahminical status, according to the misunderstanding of what they considered to be Varnashram culture. So, Buddha took everyone away from the Vedas, but he taught voidism. It didn't teach voidism, sorry. But he taught something that was later misunderstood as voidism. Sorry about that. So, he had his purpose. Buddha's an incarnation of Krishna. So Shankaracharya wanted to bring people back to the Vedic literatures, but he couldn't bring them back fully to the proper understanding of the Vedic literatures, so he brought them to a misunderstanding of the Vedic literatures, which was very similar to the Buddhist teaching, but utilizing the Vedic literatures. Okay? Got it? So he brought them back to the Vedic literatures, teaching impersonal philosophy, what's called Mayavad philosophy, that is, the Lord's body is material, and the Lord's pastimes are illusion, your individuality is an illusion, and ultimately you have to give up your individuality and merge into the oneness, the energy. You're one with the energy. Let the force be with you. Anyway, so that was the teaching of Shankaracharya. So he was doing that to serve the Lord, to ultimately bring people back to do what? To accept Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who came after Shankaracharya. Not only did Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu come after Shankaracharya, you also have these great acharyas like Madhvacharya and others, and also Ramanujacharya, who came after Shankaracharya and brought people the full way back to the Vedic literatures. And Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu taught the most elevated understanding of the Siddhanta, which is called the Chincha Beda Abeda Tattva, how everything is one and different from the Lord, simultaneously, inconceivably. So, sorry if I went a little fast with that one. So, but it was a very interesting story that Prabhupada told in the purport. Not Prabhupada, but when Shankaracharya had a discussion with this lady, and let's remember the lady's name is like Ubhaya Bharati, she wanted to discuss material love, erotic principles, which we call lust. Yuck. And so, Shankaracharya, having been a brahmachari his whole life in this particular appearance, of course, Lord Shiva is married. But anyway, so having been a brahmachari his whole life, he didn't have any experience with love or lust. So in order to have a proper argument with someone, you of the subject matter. He understood theoretically according to the Vedic literatures, but he didn't have any realization about it. So in order to get realization, he went into trance. There was a king who just died. He entered the king's body. The king popped out of the tomb and lived for a little while longer while Shankaracharya was in the body. He got a chance to experience what erotic love is. Yuck. And then he left that body of the king. The king died again. Everybody was unhappy because the king died again. And then Shankaracharya got ready to have that argument with the lady, and the lady understood what had happened, and she just left and renounced this whole world, or left her body, and her husband took sannyas from Shankaracharya. So that's an interesting story that's told in the biographies of Sripad Shankaracharya. Great personality. We don't want to offend him. He's a incarnation or an incarnation of Lord Shiva. So, Madhvacharya stane ailayaha ganhara tattvavadi utupite krishna deki tahan haila premonati. Caitanya Mahaprabhu next arrived at Udupi, the place of Madhvacharya, where the philosophers known as Tattvavadis resided. There he saw the deity of Lord Krishna and became mad with ecstasy. So Prabhupada explains that Sripad Madhvacharya took his birth near Udupi, which is situated in the South Kannada district of South India, just west of Sahyadri. This is the chief city of the South Kannada province and is near the city of Mangalore, which is situated to the south of Udupi. Near the city of Udupi is a place called Pajaka Kshetra, where Madhvacharya took his birth in a Shivali Brahmana dynasty as the son of Madhya Geha Vata in the year 1040 Shakabda, that is 1118 AD. According to some, he was born in the year 1160 Shakabda, that is AD 1238. In his childhood, Madhvacharya was known as Vasudeva. And there are some wonderful stories surrounding him. It is said that once, when his father had piled up many debts, Madhvacharya converted tamarind seeds into actual coins to pay them off. When he was 5 years old, he was offered the sacred thread. A demon named Maniman lived near his abode in the form of a snake, and at the age of 5, Madhvacharya killed that snake with the toe of his left foot. When his mother was very much disturbed, he would appear before her in one jump. Let me explain one thing about Madhvacharya. He's one of the Vayuputras. Vayuputra means the sons, or the son of Vayu. Vayu is the wind god. And the first famous Vayuputra is Hanuman. The second really famous Vayuputra is Bhimsen. And the third famous Vayuputra is Madhvacharya. So they all had great strength, as we're going to hear in a second. He was a great scholar even in childhood, and although his father did not agree, he accepted sannyas at the age of 12. Actually, there's an interesting story about him taking sannyas. His parents were quite aged. That means old. And being old, they were dependent upon their son. When their son would grow up, the son would take care of them, because that's the old age insurance in India. That your son will take care of you when you get old. You don't have to worry about retirement because your son will take care of you. Okay. And also, when you die, your son will perform pinda. That's why the son is called putra. He who saves you from hell, or putri, the lady who saves you from hell, his daughter. So, anyway, he was very close, Madhvacharya was very, very close to this sannyasi named Achyuta Preksha. And Achyuta Preksha was a very intelligent sannyasi, because whenever this little boy, way before Madhvacharya took sannyas, whenever this little boy Madhvacharya came to his home or his ashram, he would give him some sweets. And Madhvacharya always referred to that sannyasi as a sweet sannyasi. Okay, so he went, got sweets from the sannyasi on a regular basis, and eventually he wanted to take sannyas, but his parents, because they had no other son, said, no way you cannot take sannyas. Then he said to his parents, let's make a deal. If you could have another son, will you let me take sannyas? And they said, yeah, sounds like a good deal. Because they were so old at that time that there was almost no possibility of them having another son. But lo and behold, Madhvacharya's mother gave birth to another son. Madhvacharya ran off, and at the age of 12, he took sannyas from Achyuta Preksha. Achyuta Preksha, actually, was a Mayavad person. Mayavad sannyasi or Mayavad Brahmin, whatever. And later on, Madhvacharya converted him and initiated his guru, or reinitiated his guru, into Vaishnavism. So Madhvacharya received the name Purna Pragyatirtha. After traveling all over India, he finally discussed scriptures with Vijaya Shankara, the exalted leader of the Shringari Math. Remember, we talked about that in the previous purport. The Shringari Math was the main math of Shankaracharya. Vijaya Shankara was defeated, of course. Vijaya Shankara was actually diminished in the presence of Madhvacharya, accompanied by Satyatirtha, that was Madhvacharya's primary disciple. Madhvacharya went to Badrik Ashram. It was there that he met Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and explained his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita before him. Thus he became a great scholar by studying before Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is still there in Badrik Ashram. By the time he came to the Ananda Math from Badrik Ashram, Madhvacharya had finished his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. His companion Satyatirtha wrote down the entire commentary. When Madhvacharya returned from Badrik Ashram, he went to Ganjama, which is on the bank of the river Godavari. There he met with two learned scholars named Shobhana Bhatta and Swami Shastri. Later, these scholars became known in the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya as Padmanabha Tirtha and Narahari Tirtha. When he returned to Udupi, he would sometimes bathe in the ocean. On such an occasion, he composed the prayer in 5 chapters. Once, while sitting beside the sea, engrossed in meditation upon Lord Sri Krishna, he saw that a large boat containing goods from Dwarka was in danger. He gave some signs by which the boat could approach the shore, and it was saved. The owners of the boat wanted to give him a present, and at that time Madhvacharya agreed to take some Gopi Chandana. That's the tilak stuff that we put on our forehead. He received a big lump of Gopi Chandana, and as it was being brought to him, it broke apart and revealed the large deity of Lord Krishna. The deity had a stick in one hand and a lump of food in the other. As soon as Madhvacharya received the deity of Krishna in this way, he composed a prayer. The deity was so heavy that not even 30 people could lift it. Yet Madhvacharya personally brought this deity to Udupi. 8 of Madhvacharya's sannyas disciples became directors of his 8 monasteries. Worship of Lord Krishna deity is still going on at Udupi according to the plans Madhvacharya established. Also, I wanted to mention that Sripad Madhvacharya was worshipping Sita and Ram deities, and those are the Sita and Ram deities that were first worshipped by Vivaswan, Manu, Ishvaku, passed down through disciplic succession, later given to Dasarath, then to Lord Ram. Lord Ram put them in a closet, and they were given to a Brahmin to worship, so the Brahmin wouldn't have to fast all the time. I told that story before, I'm not going to tell it now. And later on, those deities were given to Hanuman, and Hanuman gave those deities to Shripad, Madhvacharya, and those deities are there in Udupi today. Sita and Ram deities that have been passed down since time immemorial. Madhvacharya then for the second time visited Bhadragasha. While he was passing through Maharashtra, a local king was digging a big lake for the public benefit. As Madhvacharya passed through that area with his disciples, he was also obliged to help in the excavation. After some time, when Madhvacharya visited the king, he engaged the king in that work and departed with his disciples. Often in the province of Ganga Pradesha, there were fights between the Hindus and Muslims. The Hindus were on one bank of the river and the Muslims on the other. Due to the community tension, no boat was available for crossing the river. The Muslim soldiers were always stopping passengers on the other side. But Madhvacharya did not care for these soldiers. He crossed the river anyway, actually swam with his disciples. And when he met the soldiers on the other side, he was brought before the king. The Muslim king was so pleased with him that he wanted to give him a kingdom and some money, but Madhvacharya refused. While walking on, he was attacked by some dacoits, but by his bodily strength he killed them all. When his companion Sachatirtha was attacked by a tiger, Madhvacharya separated them by virtue of his great strength. When he met Vyasadeva, he received from him the Shalagram Shila known as Ashtamurti, the 8 forms. After this, he summarized the Mahabharata. I mean, he was so strong he could practically fly through the air. And in his ashram with his disciples, one of their pastimes between him and his disciples was that they would wrestle each other and engage in sports. Very interesting, unusual spiritual master. But of course, he is a Vayuputra, so that's understandable. Madhvacharya's devotion to the Lord and his erudite scholarship became known throughout India. Consequently, the owners of the Sringeri Math, established by Shankaracharya, became a little perturbed. At that time, the followers of Shankaracharya were afraid of Madhvacharya's rising power, and they began to teach Acharya's disciples in many ways. There was even an attempt to prove that the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya was not in line with Vedic principles. A person named Pundarika Puri, a follower of the Mayavad philosophy of Shankaracharya, came before Madhvacharya to discuss the Shastras. It is said that all of Madhvacharya's books were taken away, but later they were found with the help of King Jayasingha, ruler of Kumla. So in other words, before this discussion he had with Pundarika Puri, who was a follower of Shankaracharya, someone stole his books, so Madhvacharya didn't have any books to refer to, but he had all these books memorized. So he's soundly defeated. As we'll hear, in discussion, Pundarika Puri was defeated by Madhvacharya, a great personality named Trivikramacharya, who was a resident of Vishnu Mango, became Madhvacharya's disciple, and his son later became Narayanacharya, the composer of Sri Madhva Vijaya. After the death of Trivikramacharya, the younger brother of Narayanacharya took sannyasa and later became known as Vishnu Tirtha. It was reputed that there was no, he's such a wonderful personality, there was no limit to the bodily strength of Purna Pragya Madhvacharya. There was a person named Kodanjari who was famed for possessing the strength of 30 men. Madhvacharya placed the big toe of his foot upon the ground and asked the man to separate it from the ground, but the great strong man could not do so even after great effort. Srila Madhvacharya passed from this material world at the age of 80 while writing a commentary on the Aitareya Upanishad. For further information about Madhvacharya, one should read Madhva Vijaya by Narayanacharya. Okay, so here's a list. Ooh. I guess I should read this list, since this is a list of devotees. The Acharyas of the Madhvacharya Sampradaya established Udupi as the chief center in the monastery. There was known as Uttararadhi Mata. A list of the different centers of the Madhvacharya Sampradaya can be found at Udupi, and their math commanders are 1 Vishnu Tirtha, Shuddhamata, 2 Janardana Tirtha, Krishna Pura Mata, Vamana Tirtha, Kanura Mata, Nrsimha Tirtha, Adamara Nata, Upendra Tirtha, Putugi Mata, Rama Tirtha, Shirura Mata, Rishikesha Tirtha, Palimara Mata, and Ekshobha Tirtha, Pijavara Mata. The disciplic succession of Madhvacharya of the Madhvacharya Sampradaya is as follows. The dates are those of birth. In the Shakabda era, for Christian era dates add 78 years. 1. Hamsa Paramatma. 2. Chaturmukha Brahma. 3. Sarakari. 4. Davrasa. 5. Gananidhi. 6. Garuda Vahana. 7. Kaivalya Tirtha. 8. Janesha Tirtha. 9. Paratirtha. 10. Sacha Pragya Tirtha. 11. Pragya Tirtha. 12. Achyuta Prekshacharya Tirtha. 13. Srimadvacharya 1040 Shaka. 14. Padmanabha 1120. Narahari 1127. Madhva 1136. Anakshobha 1159. Jayatirtha 1167. Vijayadhiraja 1190. Kavindra 1255. Bhagisha 1261. Ramachandra 1269. Vijayanidhi 1298. Sri Raghunatha 1366. Rayu Varya, who spoke with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 1424. Raghuttama 1471. Vedavyasa 1517. Vidyadisha 1541. 26. Vedanidhi 1553. Satyavrata 1557. Satyanidhi 1560. Satyanatha 1582. Satyavinava 1595. Satyapurna 1628. Satyavijaya 1648. 20 years, yeah. Satyapriya 1659. Satyabodha 1666. Satyasanda 1705. Many years. Satyavara 1716. Satyadharma 1719. Only 3 years. Satya Sankalpa 1752, sorry. Satya Santushta 1763. Satya Parayana 1763. Same year. Satya Kama 1785. Satyeshta 1793. Satya Parakrama 1794. Satya Dhira 1801. After the 16th Acharya, Vidyadhiraja Tirtha, there was another disciplic succession, including Rajendra Tirtha 1254, Vijaya Dwaja Purushottama Supra Amanya, and Vyasaraya 1470 to 1520. The 19th Acharya, Ramachandra Tirtha, had another disciplic succession, including Vibhudhendra 1218, Jitamitra 1348, Raghuvanandana, Surendra Vijendra, Sudhindra, and Raghavendra Tirtha 1545. To date, in the Udupi monastery, there are another 14 Madhva Tirtha sannyasis, as stated, situated beside the sea in South Kannada, about 36 miles north of Mangalore. Most of the information in this purport is available from the South Kannada Manual and Bombay Gazette. Okay. That time I mentioned because they're devotee. I think that's important. Just mentioning devotee names is extremely spiritual. So I'm not going to mention names of Mayavadis. Narataka Gopala Deke Parama Mohane Madhvacharya Swapnatiya Haila Tanrastane. While at the Udupi monastery, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw dancing Gopal, the most beautiful deity. This deity appeared to Madhvacharya in a dream. Wow. Gopi Chandana Tale Achila Dinghate Madhvacharya Se Krishna Paila Konamate. Madhvacharya had somehow or other acquired the deity of Krishna from a heap of Gopi Chandana that had been transported in a boat. And that's the story we told a few purports ago. Madhvacharya Ani Tanre Karila Stapana Adhai Vari Seva Kari Tatvavari Gana. Madhvacharya brought this dancing Gopal deity to Udupi and installed him in the temple. To date, the followers of Madhvacharya, known as Tattvavadis, worship this deity. Krishnamurti Deki Prabhu Maha Sukhapaila Premaveshi Bahukshana Richagita Kaila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received great pleasure in seeing this beautiful form of Gopal. For a long time he danced and chanted in ecstatic love. Tatvavadi Gada Prabhu ke Mayavati Jane Tathama Darshane Prabhu ke Nakaila Sambhashane. When the Tattvavadi Vaishnavas first saw Caitanya Mahaprabhu, they considered him a Mayavadi sannyasi. Therefore, they did not talk to him. Premavesha Dekihaila Chamatkara Vaishnava Jnane Bahuta Karila Satkara. Later, after seeing Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu in ecstatic love, they were struck with wonder. Then, considering him a Vaishnava, they gave him a nice reception. Vaishnavata Saparantare Garvajani Ishat Hasiya Kichukai Gauramani. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could understand that the Tattvavadis were very proud of their Vaishnavism. Therefore he smiled and began to speak to them. Tansavarantare Garbhajani Gora Chandra Tansava Sange Goshti Karila Harambha. Considering them very proud, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began his discussion. Tattvavadi Acharya Saba Shastrete Pravina Tanre Prashna Kaila Prabhu Hanayena Tina. The chief acharya of the Tattvavadi community was very learned in the revealed scriptures. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu humbly questioned him. Saja Sadanami na Jani Vala Mate Saja Sadhana Krishna Janaha Mate. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I do not know very well the aim of life and how to achieve it. Please tell me of the best ideal for humanity and how to attain it. Acharya kahe varnashrama dharma krishna samarpana ehaya krishna bhaktera shreshta sadhana. The Acharya replied, the activities of the four castes and the four ashrams are dedicated to Krishna. They constitute the best means whereby one can attain the highest goal of life. Wow, sounds familiar, doesn't it? Think about this for a second. It sounds very familiar. What do I mean by sounding very familiar? When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his discussion, let me write this down, 256. Okay. All right. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his discussion with Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya was asking Ramananda Roy questions. What is the goal? What is the sadhya? And what is the sadhana? Two words that I think you should all remember. Sadhya means goal. Sadhana means like the practice by which one attains a particular goal. Just like we have sadhana bhakti, which means practice devotional service, and the sadhya is Krishna prema. So anyway, this was a discussion between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, and the first answer that Ramananda Roy gave was Varnashram. And the first response that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave was, this is external. Although Varnashram is not thrown out, it's not that we say, forget about Varnashram, because Varnashram basically means we each have a psychophysical nature. We'd like to study, we like to control, we like to make money, we like to do gardening, we like to work with our hands, we like to do artistic work, we love computers, whatever. And based upon that propensity, or those propensities, or those likes, which are called guna and karma, then we're engaged in a certain type of activity. And also ashrams. We like to be single, Haribol. Or someone likes to be married, not so Haribol, or Haribol, okay, Haribol. So, or someone likes to be retired and engage full time in Krishna consciousness with one's family, Haribol. Or one likes to be a sannyasi, Haribol. You see my propensities. And so one is engaged accordingly. That's all. That's Varnashram in essence. It doesn't mean you go on a farm. It doesn't mean you have to milk cows. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in the kitchen all the time. It doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean so many things. It means whatever your guna and karma is, you should do it for Krishna. in a regulated fashion and stick to it. That's one of the lessons we hear in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says to Arjuna, "You're guna and karmas, you're a fighter. You're a grahasta and you're a... Forget about changing it, Arjuna, baby. Just do what you are, or utilize what you are for Krishna." That's it. Don't try to do someone else's service, because by your nature you're going to be forced to do what's in accordance with your own nature. And it's going to be a disaster. If you don't like to fight, and you stop this particular fight in the battle, etc., then you're going to end up fighting with someone improperly. You're going to be forced by your nature. So very, very important. So this is one of the problems with the Tattvavadis. They consider Varnashram to be like really, really important. Unfortunately, now in ISKCON, we see a lot of devotees pushing this Varnashram point again and again and again. And they want to pigeonhole different devotees according to their gender, according to their whatever, nationality, according to their skin color, in particular roles. They don't understand what Prabhupada wanted with Varnashram. They want to use Varnashram to actually control people. They're misunderstanding. They're very ritualistic, as are the Tattvavadis, and we're going to hear about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's connections and discussions with the Tattvavadis tomorrow. But right now, we are going to take questions from all of you. So now we stopped sharing the screen, and now we stopped muting you. So any of you who wish to speak now, or right now, or raise your hand, if you want to raise your hand, then I can call on you. Madhava.
Dandavat Gurudev. So I have one question. I know when Sankaracharya actually entered the body of the king to experience that, the moment he entered, the king died, and then how long he was there in that body when this king became alive again? How long? Any idea, any duration?
I just remember vaguely about a month's time he remained in that body, but I may be wrong about that. Don't take that as absolute. For some time he remained in the king's body, experiencing the king's material enjoyment. So he could argue about that. Yeah, I remember vaguely a month, but I don't remember any more than that.
Okay, because I thought if it is long, then normally in Hindu culture, a person dies and they cremate very soon.
Yes. No, so what happened is the king, just like when the king is getting ready to breathe his last, it's not that he was quite dead.
Oh,
he was just like at the point, sometimes you see someone getting ready to die and all of a sudden they get better again.
Right.
So that's what happened. He was at the point of death and he was getting ready, okay, leave the body, and boop, he leaves the body, and Madhvacharya and Shankaracharya enters. Same moment. So it's not that the king died and then like 2 days later he entered the body. The body disintegrates, the brain tissues get destroyed within a few minutes after death. I mean, if you take oxygen from the body for more than 4 minutes or 5 minutes, then you have brain death at that point.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So oxygen is very important. That's why people die from COVID in many cases, because they don't have enough oxygen coming in their lungs. The lungs are filled with fluid or all expanded, and they can't breathe, and the brain dies, and the body dies because there's no oxygen. So obviously, he got in the body just when the king was leaving the body at that instant. And then he experienced things, and everybody was thinking the king was still living, or it popped out. Just like we see sometimes, there's some stories, even nowadays, at the morgue. There were several stories I read about in the morgue. The morgue is where they put the dead bodies, that sometimes they discover the person's still alive, because the person hasn't actually died. The body is the person's in a state of almost suspended animation. The breathing is slowed down to such an extent that they think the person has died, but the person hasn't actually died. So anyway, it was arranged. All I know is Shankaracharya, by his mystic power, was able to do it.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.
All right. But we should not do that. We should not enter anyone else's body. We had enough enjoyment in this life. Enter into another body to experience enjoyment, to have an argument with someone. Okay, nice question. Here's a question from Jai Radhika. Hare Krishna, Gurudev. In this pastime, correct that Madhvacharya tricked his mom by placing his feet in crocodile's mouth to convince his mom to take it. Yes, never heard that story before. That's probably a made-up story. I pretty much know most of the stories about Madhvacharya, and that's not one of the stories I heard. Sometimes you have these fantastic stories that are made up. It's called hagiography. I don't know if any of you heard this word. I'll type it out. I'll type it out for you. What that word means is that when you have biographies of saints or great personalities, there are a lot of, let us say, invented things or fictions in those biographies. Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talked about that. He said in the Bhakti Ratnakara, which is actually the biography, or is the biographies of Narottama Das Thakur, Shaimananda, and Srinivasacharya, he said there's a lot of stuff that's been made up. So many times there's attempts to really glorify someone by inventing some stories. It's like sometimes people see a picture of me when I was a baby and I'm bending over and they say, oh, this is your first obeisance that you were offering when you were a little baby. But it's not. I was bending over because I was probably regurgitating or something like that. It's just like, but people make up so many stories about great saints that aren't really true. And so many, let's say they make up words that they think or they want great saints to have said that justify their particular. So one has to be very careful about these hagiographies. Actually, that's a really important word. Hagiography means basically the biographies of great saints that have been added to in such a way as to be more dramatic and be more interesting. Just like in my own life, my own biography is quite boring. I was born, joined the Hare Krishna movement, took sannyas, and here I am in North Carolina. So I'm sure one day people will make up some story about how I was born and I had tilak and neck beads and a Brahmin thread when I came out of my mama's womb. And then the first words I said was Krishna and Prabhupada. It's just like sometimes parents, they think their child is saying Prabhupada when the little boy is just saying Papa, which is actually very easy for a little kid to say. Papa. Well, there's always saying Prabhupada. But he wasn't saying Prabhupada, he's just mouthing some vibrations from his kid's mouth. So anyway, this is called hagiographies. Remember that term. It's very important to understand that term. Hagiographies, because many of these biographies are fictional. And not the whole biography fictional, but they add some things to the biography just to make it more spicy. So, who has another question? You can type your question. Where is the mind? And where does it reside? It's a subtle body. Why are the
Krishna,
words... Here's the question. Let me just answer this question first. What is the mind and where does it reside? Mind is one of the subtle elements in this material world. We know the gross elements of the Pancha Mahabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then the subtle one is mind, intelligence, and false ego. They're covered, it's a subtle coverage. It's something astral body, the subtle body, the ghostly body, the astral body. Very. So it's material, and it exists, and you can't see it unless you actually have some astral vision. You can see ghosts. We have one of my disciples is a professional ghostbuster. So whenever I need ghosts busted or gotten rid of, I call for him. And he comes with his ghost busting guns and everything like that for protoplasm. And I'm just joking about that. So he's a professional ghostbuster. And he can see and talk to the ghosts. Like one time I wanted to get rid of ghosts somewhere in some house here. And I said, my dear Ghostbuster Prabhu, can you come to the house and get rid of these ghosts? And can I watch you? I brought my phone with me. I want to take a picture of the ghosts. I thought it'd be really cool, put on the internet. Ghost pictures, subtle body pictures, mental pictures. And, whoops, the ghost in the camera made me closer. Let me make myself further away. Hold on a second. Okay, that's a ghost. So anyway, what we did, we went there to the house with him, and I had my phone where I take a picture of the ghost. Okay, call for the ghosts. And he said, Guru Maharaj, you got to get out of here. I said, why? Don't the ghosts want a selfie? What's wrong with these ghosts? They can have a selfie with me and I could put it on Facebook. And I'm adding a few things to the story. And he said, the ghosts won't come as long as you're there. I said, why? Don't the ghosts like sannyasis? No, they don't like sannyasis. They're anti-sannyasi ghosts. So that's the mind. And the mind is actually the flavor of the desire. Krishna in the Gita explains that one transfers the soul from one body to another, and the subtle body too, from one gross body to another, based upon the desire or the mind's propensities. And air carries aromas, like the aroma of a flower can be carried from one place to another. So the mind is that's a very subtle element, and it determines the state of the mind. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam yasate ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kontia saratad bhava bhavatat. It determines what type of body you're going to get in your next life, whatever state your mind is in. So it resides in this material world, but in a very subtle form. It doesn't reside in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, we have a spiritual mind, but the spiritual mind is non-different from the person, and non-different from the body, non-different from the soul, because there's no duality in the spiritual world. But in the material world, the mind is different from us. It just accompanies the soul. It's a covering of the soul. And that mind is contaminated. So we want to have a pure mind, uncontaminated mind. Shuddha habi manak. Kavi hamahi rabo shri Vrindavana. When the mind is pure, then Vrindavan is perceived by the mind. But right now, the material mind, which is in the material world, covers the real mind, and that's where it resides. Why are words considered different from mind when mind influences words? I don't understand the question. Words are just like sound vibrations in this material world. They're not actually the mind. They're different from the mind. But by words, the mind associates certain experiences, certain thoughts, certain emotions when we hear a word. Like if we hear the word hot, then we associate heat with, we feel hot, or, we associate the experience of heat with the word hot. However, if you don't understand English, then you could hear the word hot and it doesn't mean a damn thing to you, because it's only based upon your knowledge. Words in this world are different from the object to which they refer. Whereas in the spiritual world, the words and the object to which they refer are the same thing. When we say Krishna, Krishna is there. That's the spiritual realm. There's no duality, but in the material world, there's duality. So, Rishikesh, finally you have a question. I heard you say something a second ago, Rishikesh.
Yes, Kuldeep, sorry, I was on mute. Um, my question is, there are so many small stories so stories in Vrindavan in Braj, that Krishna did this, Krishna did that. How much you can trust? I mean, that these stories are authentic
The
because
only way
not
you know
everything
whether
is
they're
described in Bhagavatam.
the only way you know they're authentic is if they're in the Bhagavatam or written by the acharyas or in some other bona fide Vedic literature. Otherwise, they're just tales. Maybe all right because they help you remember Krishna. You know, someone will say Krishna did this here, Krishna did that there, Krishna did that pastime. But unless it's in Shastra, yeah, and then it's just like a tale, a village tale. But because you go to Vrindavan, it helps you remember Krishna. So it's not like a waste of time, but you're just remembering Krishna, and maybe he didn't do those things, or maybe he did do them, but we don't know. So what we do is we accept things in Shastra, Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, in disciplic succession. That's our point. Okay, I think it's time to end. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see everybody tomorrow.